The command cut through the cabin like a blade. "Get up and get out of here. This is no place for someone like you." Flight attendant Vivian Langford stood over the black businessman, arms crossed, deliberately blocking his view with a wall of intimidation. Callum Drake glanced up from his acquisition papers and met her hostile stare without flinching. Behind her, a white passenger tapped his foot with exaggerated impatience, rolling his eyes at the inconvenience. "This is my assigned seat, ma'am," Callum said calmly, holding out his boarding pass. Vivian snatched it without looking. "Anyone can print fake tickets. This gentleman paid full price for first class." She jerked her thumb toward the white passenger. "You need to gather your things and move to the back where you belong." The cabin temperature seemed to drop. Passengers froze. A young woman in the next row quietly began recording. "Have you ever been treated like you don't belong somewhere you've earned the right to be?" The overhead announcement crackled. Final boarding preparations were underway. Vivian Langford planted herself firmly beside the seat, her long seniority evident in every practiced gesture. She had handled situations like this before. Her badge caught the cabin light as she crossed her arms, creating a human barrier between Callum and his seat. "Look, I don't have time for games," Vivian said, her voice rising just enough for surrounding passengers to hear. "We have a legitimate first-class passenger waiting, and you're holding up the entire flight." Preston Hale, the white passenger in question, stepped forward with theatrical impatience. His expensive watch glinted as he gestured toward the seat. "Finally, someone is handling this properly. I have a connecting flight and I can't miss it because of—" He paused, his meaning crystal clear. Callum remained seated, his briefcase balanced on his lap. Inside, acquisition papers worth millions waited, but he focused on the immediate crisis. He pulled out his Diamond Elite status card alongside the boarding pass, both clearly displaying his name and seat assignment. "Ma'am, I've been flying this airline for years. Diamond member. This is definitely my seat." His voice carried the quiet authority of boardroom negotiations, but Vivian dismissed it with a wave. "Anyone can fake these nowadays," she scoffed, barely glancing at the documents. "I see knockoff cards all the time. Security's gotten very sophisticated about catching fraudulent upgrades." Celine Vaughn, a marketing executive in the adjacent seat, discreetly angled her phone. Her live stream notification popped up. "Discrimination on this flight right now. A handful of viewers became dozens, then hundreds. Comments started flooding in." The tension rippled through first class. Passengers in nearby rows turned to watch, some openly recording. An elderly couple whispered anxiously. A business traveler shook his head in disgust. "Just move along, buddy," Preston said, his tone suggesting he was doing everyone a favor. "Some of us have real business to conduct. I'm sure there's a perfectly good seat in coach." Callum's phone buzzed against his thigh. A board meeting was approaching, the final vote on a major partnership. He ignored it, maintaining his composure despite the mounting humiliation. His leather briefcase held documents that could reshape the airline's future. But these people saw only skin color. "Sir, we have procedures," Vivian continued, her voice growing more authoritative. "When there's a seating dispute, company policy requires passengers to cooperate with crew instructions. You can file a complaint later if you feel there's been an error." Celine's livestream viewer count climbed steadily. Comments streamed past, "This is disgusting. Someone call the news. I'm never flying this airline again." She kept her phone steady, capturing every word, every dismissive gesture. A flight attendant from coach appeared. Reed Ashcroft, a young black man who looked uncomfortable witnessing the scene. He approached Vivian hesitantly. "Vivian, his boarding pass clearly shows—" "Reed, return to your section," Vivian snapped. "I'm handling this." Reed retreated, but his expression spoke volumes. Several passengers caught the exchange, recognizing the complex dynamics at play. Callum opened his briefcase slightly, retrieving a business card. The motion was subtle, but Vivian noticed. "Sir, I'm going to need you to close that and prepare to relocate. We're not running a mobile office here." "Ma'am, perhaps if you contact your supervisor." "I don't need to contact anyone. I have full authority in this cabin." Vivian's voice carried the smugness of someone wielding institutional power. "Either you move voluntarily or we'll have security escort you off this aircraft." The threat hung in the air. Celine's livestream now showed thousands of viewers. The elderly woman gasped audibly. Even Preston shifted uncomfortably. He'd wanted the seat, but the situation was escalating beyond his comfort zone. Callum's phone buzzed again, this time a text from his assistant about media interest in the investment. He silenced the device, but the irony wasn't lost on him. The upcoming board meeting would determine the airline's diversity initiatives. Today, he was living the problem firsthand. Another announcement urged passengers to take their seats. Vivian seized the urgency. Sir, you're now officially delaying this flight. That's a federal offense. I'm calling ground security to remove you from the aircraft. She reached for her radio, the action designed to intimidate. Passengers murmured. Someone whispered, "This is crazy." Another voice, "Just let the man sit in his seat." But Vivian had crossed a line she couldn't uncross. Her authority was now publicly challenged, witnessed by dozens of phones and Celine's growing livestream audience. In her mind, backing down would undermine her credibility with passengers and crew alike. Callum remained perfectly still, his business training evident in every controlled breath. He'd negotiated billion-dollar deals with less drama than this flight attendant was creating over a seat assignment. But he also recognized the psychological trap. Any assertiveness would be labeled as aggressive or threatening. Preston cleared his throat. "Look, maybe we should just—" Vivian cut him off. "Company policy is clear, this passenger will comply or be removed." The countdown continued. Celine's stream kept climbing. And somewhere in his briefcase, Callum carried documents that would soon turn this entire encounter into the airline's most expensive customer service failure in corporate history. The stage was set. The witnesses were recording. The power dynamics seemed clear to everyone watching. They had no idea what was coming next. Vivian keyed her radio with aggressive precision, her voice carrying across the cabin as she summoned reinforcements. "Ground control, this is Langford on this flight. I need a supervisor and security at the gate immediately. We have an uncooperative passenger refusing to follow crew instructions." Celine's live stream exploded. Viewer counts jumped dramatically. Comments flooded the screen. "Record everything. This is insane. Where's the manager?" She adjusted her angle to capture the entire scene, her marketing instincts recognizing this moment's viral potential. Chief Flight Attendant Corinne Voss appeared from the galley, her supervisor stripes immediately visible. Years with the airline had taught her to read situations quickly, but she was already primed by Vivian's radio call. "What's the issue here?" Corinne's tone was professionally neutral, but her body language aligned with Vivian from the start. "Passenger in this seat refusing to relocate for a paying first-class customer," Vivian explained, gesturing dismissively toward Callum. "He's presenting fraudulent documentation and delaying our departure." Corinne glanced at Preston Hale, who nodded eagerly. "I paid full fare for first class. This is ridiculous." Callum handed Corinne his boarding pass and Diamond Elite card without a word. She examined them briefly, but Vivian leaned in, whispering something that made Corinne's expression harden. "Sir, these disputes happen frequently," Corinne said, returning the documents. "Our policy is to resolve seating issues with minimal disruption. We have several seats available in premium economy. With respect, ma'am, I purchased this specific seat." Callum interrupted quietly. "I have a confirmed reservation." Celine's phone captured every nuance. Her live stream audience had grown substantially, with shares multiplying across social platforms. The hashtag for the discrimination was gaining momentum organically. Ground supervisor. Harlan Drake jogged down the jet bridge, slightly out of breath. A longtime airport veteran, he'd handled countless passenger disputes. But Vivian's radio call had suggested something more serious. "Evening, folks. What seems to be the problem?" Before Callum could respond, Vivian launched into her narrative. Fraudulent documentation, refusing crew instructions, disrupting other passengers, potentially missed departure window. Harlan's expression shifted as he absorbed Vivian's characterization. He glanced at Callum, then at the growing crowd of recording passengers, making quick calculations about liability and schedule disruption. "Sir, I'm going to need you to step off the aircraft so we can resolve this matter properly," Harlan said, his tone suggesting non-negotiation. The cabin erupted in murmurs. Several passengers voiced objections. "This is discrimination. Let him stay in his seat. Check his documents properly." But other voices emerged too. "Just move him so we can leave. I have a connection to make. Security should handle this." The plane divided into vocal camps, with Callum at the center of a brewing social media storm. Celine's stream showed viewers from multiple countries now. The story was spreading beyond borders. Officer Tristan Hale entered the aircraft, her security uniform immediately commanding attention. A longtime airport veteran and the only black person in the official response team, she found herself in an impossible position. "Evening, everyone," Tristan said carefully. She'd watched Celine's live stream during her walk to the bay, understanding the optics before entering. "Can someone explain the situation?" Corinne stepped forward. "The passenger refuses to comply with crew instructions. We need him removed so we can maintain our departure schedule." Tristan approached Callum, her expression neutral but her eyes communicating something different. "Sir, can I see your documentation?" Callum handed over his materials again. Tristan examined them thoroughly. The boarding pass clearly showed the assigned seat. The elite status was legitimate. Even the seat selection timestamp proved everything was in order. "These documents appear valid," Tristan said slowly. But the airline crew has discretionary authority over seating arrangements, Harlan interjected. Federal aviation regulations support crew decisions in these matters. Tristan nodded reluctantly. She understood the legal framework, but she also recognized racial profiling when she saw it. Her job required following procedures, even when those procedures enabled discrimination. Another announcement urged the gate agents to prepare for departure. The time pressure became unbearable. Corinne made the decision that would cost the airline millions. Sir, we're prepared to have you removed from this flight and banned from future travel if you don't comply immediately. Callum stood slowly, his movements deliberate and controlled. Every passenger watched. Every phone recorded. Every social media feed captured this moment. He reached for his briefcase and Vivian smirked with satisfaction. Should have moved when I asked nicely, she said, just loud enough for nearby passengers to hear. Celine's live stream hit a new peak. Comments poured in from journalists, civil rights organizations, and airline industry insiders. Someone had identified the flight and was tracking it in real time. Another viewer had already posted the airline's customer service number. Callum's phone vibrated with incoming calls. His assistant, his lawyer, board members who'd seen the live stream. He ignored them all, focusing instead on the briefcase in his hands. Preston Hale settled into the seat with theatrical relief, immediately requesting champagne from a passing flight attendant. His satisfaction was visible to everyone, including Celine's cameras. Finally, Preston muttered, some people just need to learn their place. The comment hit Celine's live stream like a bomb. Viewer outrage exploded in the chat. Screenshots flew across platforms. The discrimination hashtag merged with the learn your place remark, creating a social media firestorm. Tristan stepped closer to Callum, her voice low. Sir, please just cooperate. I know this isn't right, but fighting it here won't help anyone. Callum looked at her with something resembling sympathy. Officer Hale, you're absolutely correct. Fighting this here won't help anyone. His words carried strange emphasis, as if he knew something she didn't. Tristan frowned, sensing undercurrents she couldn't identify. Corinne tied her radio. Ground control, passenger is complying. We'll need paperwork for the flight ban documentation. Copy that, cleared for departure preparations. The assembled crew, Vivian, Corinne, Harlan, stood in a semicircle around Callum, their authority apparently vindicated. They'd successfully removed an uncooperative passenger and maintained their schedule. Celine's phone showed tens of thousands of viewers now, with major news outlets beginning to pick up the story. Her hands shook slightly as she realized she was documenting something that would change everything for everyone involved. Callum reached into his briefcase and withdrew a single document. Then he pulled out 2 business cards, holding them with the same care other people reserved for loaded weapons. The smug expressions around him were about to become something else entirely. Before I leave, Callum said quietly, I think there are some people you should call. He extended the first business card to Corinne Voss with the same deliberate precision he used in billion-dollar negotiations. The embossed lettering caught the cabin light. Callum Drake, Chief Executive Officer, Drake Investment Group. Corinne's eyes moved from the card to Callum's face, then back to the card. Her expression shifted like tectonic plates, confusion, recognition, then dawning horror. Please call your district manager immediately, Callum said, his voice carrying a new quality that made everyone lean forward. Tell Elena Langford that Drake Investment Group needs to discuss our investment in this airline. The words hung in the air like smoke from an explosion. Vivian Langford's smug expression froze mid-formation. Harlan Drake stepped closer, squinting at the business card as if it might be written in a foreign language. Drake Investment Group, Corinne whispered, the name triggering corporate memory. Her face drained color as the implications cascaded through her mind. She'd seen that name on executive memos, board meeting minutes, quarterly reports. This wasn't just any investment firm. Callum handed her the second card. This one bore the airline's logo alongside legal text. Preferred stock certificate. Series A voting rights, significant ownership interest. Celine's livestream viewer count exploded. Comments flooded the screen faster than human eyes could read. Oh my god. Plot twist. He owns the airline. This is insane. Major news outlets started embedding the stream on their websites in real time. We acquired our position recently, Callum continued, his tone remaining conversational despite the bombshell, the largest private investment in this airline's history. Hundreds of millions in preferred stock with voting rights. The upcoming board meeting was scheduled to finalize our diversity initiative proposal. Vivian's hand flew to her throat. The champagne glass in Preston's hand trembled as he processed what he was hearing. Officer Tristan stepped back instinctively, recognizing a seismic shift in power dynamics that her security training had never covered. Mr. Drake, Corinne stammered, I had no idea. That was exactly the point, Callum replied, his executive presence now unmistakable. This flight was specifically chosen to observe frontline customer service practices. What you've witnessed tonight is precisely why our investment includes mandatory bias training requirements and comprehensive diversity audits. Harlan fumbled for his radio. Ground control, we need District Manager Langford on board immediately. Code Priority Alpha, this is not a drill. The aircraft fell into stunned silence. Passengers who'd been recording the discrimination now found themselves documenting corporate history. Celine's phone captured every facial expression, every moment of realization, every second of the most expensive customer service failure in aviation history. The elderly couple exchanged glances of disbelief. The businessman dropped his laptop, focusing entirely on the unfolding drama. Even Reed, the coach flight attendant, had crept forward to witness the revelation, his earlier discomfort now replaced by vindication. Callum opened his briefcase fully for the first time, revealing merger documents, legal briefs, and financial projections. The papers that Vivian had dismissed as fraudulent business materials were actually contracts worth nearly $1 billion. These documents detail our comprehensive diversity audit, Callum explained, lifting a thick folder marked Confidential Board Review. Real-world testing was Phase 1. Ms. Langford and Mr. Drake just provided exceptional data for our compliance review. Vivian's legs seemed to give way slightly. She gripped the nearest seat back for support. Her long seniority suddenly felt like years of liability. Her mind raced through every interaction with minority passengers, wondering which ones might have been secretly recorded or reported. The Federal Aviation Administration received our testing protocol some time ago, Callum continued, producing another document stamped with official seals. Tonight's incident was officially sanctioned as a civil rights compliance audit. Your actions are now part of the federal record. Preston finally found his voice. I didn't know. This is a misunderstanding. I never meant to. No misunderstanding, Mr. Hale, Callum said calmly, his boardroom authority cutting through the man's stammering. You validated discrimination against a fellow passenger. That makes you complicit in a federal civil rights violation. Your behavior is also being documented for our passenger conduct database and potential legal proceedings. Celine's live stream continued climbing, with the number rising exponentially. News organizations worldwide were picking up the story. Hashtags for the discrimination merged with ones for corporate justice and quiet power, creating a social media phenomenon that marketing executives would study for years. A passenger in a nearby row shouted, "This is better than Netflix!" Another voice called out, Sir, you're my hero." The cabin atmosphere shifted from tension to electricity as passengers realized they were witnessing a quiet power shift in real time. Our legal team includes former Justice Department civil rights attorneys, Callum continued, pulling out his phone to show a contact list. They're currently monitoring this livestream and preparing preliminary injunction paperwork. One phone call can suspend this airline's federal operating licenses pending investigation. Tristan approached carefully, her security training wearing with her recognition of the situation's complexity. Mr. Drake, sir, I apologize for... Officer Hale, you conducted yourself professionally throughout this incident, Callum interrupted. Your position was impossible and you handled it with dignity. That will be noted in our report to Airport Security Administration. The relief on Tristan's face was visible. Unlike the airline employees, she'd been caught between competing authorities rather than creating the problem herself. Her body language visibly relaxed for the first time since entering the aircraft. Corinne's radio crackled. District Manager Langford en route. Legal department has been notified. That should be sufficient time to review the immediate consequences of tonight's events, Callum said thoughtfully. He pulled out his phone, opening an app that displayed real-time airline stock prices. Our ownership position gives us significant influence over share valuation. Tonight's incident, combined with social media documentation, represents what financial analysts call material reputation risk. The numbers on his screen showed after-hours trading activity. News of the incident was already affecting investor confidence. Social media sentiment analysis showed overwhelmingly negative responses to the airline's hashtags. Stock price has dropped noticeably in a short window, Callum observed, his voice carrying the weight of financial expertise. With billions of shares outstanding, that represents a substantial market cap reduction, all from one customer service interaction. Vivian's face went ashen. She'd never considered that her actions could affect corporate valuation or shareholder value. Her training had focused on passenger compliance, not financial consequences or corporate liability. The ripple effects extend beyond stock price, Callum continued, consulting another app. Our institutional investor network includes major funds. They're all monitoring tonight's events for environmental, social, and governance compliance violations. He showed Corinne his phone screen displaying real-time social media analytics. Sentiment toward the airline had dropped dramatically. Engagement was overwhelmingly negative. Videos using the discrimination hashtag had already reached millions of views. Federal regulations require detailed incident reports for discrimination complaints, Callum continued, his corporate lawyer background evident in every precisely chosen word. Our legal team will ensure this evening receives thorough documentation and federal review. He produced his phone again, showing a contact list that included civil rights attorneys, federal regulators, and congressional staff members. Multiple people are currently monitoring Celine's live stream from our offices. This incident is being analyzed for potential class action implications. Vivian finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. Sir, there's been a terrible mistake. I was just following standard procedures. Show me the standard procedure that authorizes racial profiling, Callum interrupted. Point to the training manual that says black passengers should be assumed fraudulent until proven otherwise. The challenge hung unanswered. Vivian's mouth opened and closed without sound. Her years of experience suddenly worthless against this level of corporate accountability. Harlan attempted damage control. Mr. Drake, surely we can resolve this matter internally through proper channels. Mr. Drake, this matter became external the moment you threatened to ban me from future flights. Celine's livestream has documented everything for regulatory review and potential congressional hearings. Celine's viewer count kept rising, with international news outlets beginning live coverage. The story was beyond containment now, spreading through news networks, social media, and aviation industry channels like wildfire. Callum retrieved another document from his briefcase. Federal aviation regulations address involuntary removal of passengers. None of the legal criteria were met tonight. This was discrimination, pure and simple. He held up a legal brief thick enough to stop bullets. Our preliminary injunction paperwork is already prepared. Drake Investment Group has the legal resources to tie this airline in federal court for years. The threat wasn't empty corporate posturing. The firm employed more attorneys than some government agencies. Their legal resources could tie the airline in regulatory knots for decades. Preston stood abruptly from the seat, finally understanding his precarious position. I should probably return to my original seat. You should probably contact your employer's legal department, Callum suggested. Your comments are recorded on multiple platforms. Learn Your Place will likely become Exhibit A in discrimination training seminars nationwide. The cabin door opened, and Elena Langford entered with the urgency of someone whose career was in freefall. Years with the airline had prepared her for many crises, but not this one. Mr. Drake, she said immediately, bypassing all subordinates. I deeply apologize for this unprecedented situation. Ms. Langford, apologies don't address systemic problems, Callum replied. Your company has a limited window to present a comprehensive action plan addressing the discrimination patterns documented tonight. He handed her a final business card. Our law firm specializes in corporate compliance and civil rights litigation. They'll be expecting your call shortly. The livestream audience watched in fascination as one of America's largest airlines scrambled to contain damage from a single customer service interaction. The story had everything: corporate drama, social justice, hidden power, and real-time consequences. Passengers throughout the cabin began applauding spontaneously. The sound built from scattered claps to a thunderous ovation. Celine's phone captured the moment when ordinary travelers celebrated extraordinary justice. Callum stood slowly, his bearing transformed from victim to executive. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes our impromptu case study in customer service excellence. Ms. Langford, shall we discuss the immediate changes your company will implement? Vivian Langford, Harlan Drake, and Preston Hale stood frozen like statues in a museum exhibit. Discrimination in the digital age. Their faces would soon become cautionary tales in corporate training programs worldwide. Elena Langford stepped into the aircraft cabin like a firefighter entering a burning building. Her years with the airline had taught her to assess corporate damage quickly, but the scene before her defied all training protocols. Mr. Drake, she began, her voice carefully modulated, I want to personally assure you that this airline takes these matters extremely seriously. Callum remained seated, his briefcase open like a war room command center. Financial documents, legal briefs, and regulatory filings spread across his tray table in organized precision. Ms. Langford, serious situations require serious solutions. Let's discuss the metrics. He lifted a tablet displaying real-time data analytics. Drake Investment tracks customer satisfaction scores across all portfolio companies. This airline currently ranks near the bottom in passenger experience within our transportation sector. Elena's face tightened. Those numbers weren't public knowledge, but Callum's investment position granted access to internal performance data that even most executives never saw. Our analysis shows hundreds of discrimination complaints filed against this airline in a recent period, Callum continued, consulting another document. That's a significant increase from the previous period, with the majority involving passengers of color. Celine's live stream had reached a massive audience, and major news networks were now providing live coverage. Multiple outlets had interrupted regular programming for breaking news of the discrimination incident. Vivian stood frozen near the galley, her career imploding in real time. Harlan clutched his radio like a lifeline, but no amount of ground control could save him from this corporate meltdown. The financial implications extend beyond stock price volatility, Callum explained, pulling up another screen. Our environmental, social, and governance assessment directly influences our substantial investment strategy. Tonight's incident represents a material breach of our partnership agreement. Elena pulled out her own tablet, frantically consulting corporate crisis management protocols. Mr. Drake, Mr. Drake, what immediate actions would demonstrate our commitment to addressing these concerns? Accountability comes first, Callum replied. Ms. Langford will be immediately suspended pending a full investigation. Mr. Drake will undergo comprehensive bias training before returning to passenger-facing duties. He gestured toward the livestream documentation. Celine Vaughn's video provides unambiguous evidence of discriminatory conduct. Federal regulations require immediate reporting of civil rights violations. Preston, still trembling in the seat, finally found the courage to speak. Mr. Drake, I sincerely apologize for my behavior. I had no right to— Mr. Hale, your apology is noted, but insufficient, Callum interrupted. This airline will implement a passenger conduct database tracking discriminatory behavior. Your actions tonight qualify for inclusion. The threat wasn't empty. Airlines maintain sophisticated databases tracking passenger behavior, and inclusion could affect future travel privileges across multiple carriers. Our legal department has identified numerous specific federal violations from tonight's incident, Callum continued, consulting a legal brief. Each violation carries potential fines ranging from tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands per occurrence. Elena's hands shook slightly as she calculated the potential financial exposure. Multi-figure fines could devastate quarterly earnings and trigger regulatory scrutiny across the entire operation. The Department of Transportation has granted our firm special investigation authority, Callum added, producing an official document with federal seals. This incident will be documented as part of our comprehensive civil rights compliance audit. He opened his phone to reveal a conference call with multiple participants. Our legal team is currently preparing preliminary injunction paperwork. We can suspend this airline's federal operating certificates pending investigation. The cabin fell silent, except for the hum of engines and the soft murmur of Celine's livestream commentary. Passengers in nearby rows leaned forward, recognizing they were witnessing corporate history unfold. However, Callum continued, his tone suggesting negotiation rather than destruction, Drake Investment Group believes in rehabilitation over punishment. We're prepared to work with this airline on comprehensive reform. Elena seized the opening. What specific changes would satisfy your compliance requirements? Callum retrieved a thick document marked Confidential Board Proposal. The Drake Protocol, a 5-point diversity action plan developed by our civil rights attorneys and organizational psychologists. He outlined the requirements with boardroom precision. Point 1. Immediate implementation of bias recognition training for all customer-facing employees. Substantial mandatory hours with annual recertification. Significant annual cost. Point 2. Real-time discrimination monitoring system using artificial intelligence to analyze passenger interactions. Warning systems alert supervisors to potential bias incidents. Substantial development and ongoing maintenance costs. Point 3. Independent civil rights ombudsman position reporting directly to the CEO. This person investigates discrimination complaints and has authority to terminate employees for violations. Substantial annual budget including staff and operations. Point 4. Quarterly diversity audits by third-party civil rights organizations. Results published publicly and shared with federal regulators. Substantial quarterly cost. Point 5. A major diversity scholarship fund supporting aviation careers for underrepresented communities. This creates pipeline diversity while demonstrating genuine commitment to change. Elena's tablet showed the financial implications. Substantial first-year costs with ongoing annual commitments. The numbers were staggering, but the alternative, regulatory shutdown and investor flight, would cost billions. Our timeline is non-negotiable, Callum continued. This airline has a limited window to accept these terms or face immediate divestiture of our substantial position. He showed his phone screen displaying pre-market trading data. Major institutional investors have all contacted us. They're prepared to follow our lead if we divest. Combined, that represents billions in institutional investment. The threat was carefully calculated. Losing that much institutional support would trigger a death spiral in share price and credit ratings that could take years to recover from. The broader implications extend beyond this airline, Callum explained. Our investor network includes pension funds representing millions of workers. They're watching tonight's response as a test case for corporate accountability. Vivian finally spoke, her voice cracking with desperation. Mr. Drake, I have a family. I've worked here for years. Please don't let one mistake destroy my career. Callum turned to face her directly. Ms. Langford, your mistake was treating me like a criminal because of my skin color. That wasn't a momentary lapse in judgment. It was systematic bias that's affected hundreds of passengers. He consulted another document. Our investigation found numerous prior complaints against you involving passenger profiling. This wasn't your first offense, it was simply the first time you were held accountable. The number hit the cabin like a physical blow. Multiple complaints meant years of discriminatory behavior, a pattern of bias that management had ignored until tonight. Harlan attempted one final defense. Mr. Drake, we were following established protocols for passenger disputes. Show me the protocol authorizing racial profiling, Callum challenged. Produce the training manual that says black passengers should be treated as suspected criminals. Harlan opened his mouth, then closed it without speaking. No such protocol existed, and everyone knew it. Elena checked the time. Mr. Drake, I need to conference with our executive team and legal department. Can we schedule a formal meeting soon? The board meeting is approaching, Callum replied. Your response determines whether Drake Investment Group increases our investment or divests entirely. He began packing his briefcase with methodical precision. Ms. Langford, this airline just received the most expensive customer service lesson in aviation history. The question is whether you'll learn from it. Celine's live stream had reached a massive audience, with clips spreading across every social media platform. The story was already being covered by international news outlets, making this a global public relations crisis. The civil rights movement didn't end decades ago, Callum said quietly. It evolved into boardrooms and stock portfolios. Tonight you learned that economic power can enforce social justice more effectively than protests or litigation. He stood slowly, his executive presence now undeniable. Ladies and gentlemen, discrimination is expensive. This airline is about to discover exactly how expensive. The cabin erupted in spontaneous applause again, louder than before. Passengers who'd witnessed discrimination transform into accountability cheered for justice served high above the ground. Vivian Langford, Harlan Drake, and Preston Hale would never forget the night they learned that quiet power speaks louder than raised voices. A short time later, the airline's CEO, Sterling Voss, stood before an emergency board meeting, his prepared statement trembling in his hands. The Drake Investment Group conference room buzzed with tension as Callum reviewed the airline's proposed response. Mr. Drake, Sterling began, this airline accepts full responsibility for the incident. We're prepared to implement immediate changes. The livestream fallout had been devastating. Celine's video reached millions of views across platforms. The discrimination hashtag dominated trending topics globally. The stock price dropped significantly in overnight trading, erasing substantial market value. Vivian Langford has been terminated effective immediately, Sterling announced. Our investigation revealed a pattern of discriminatory behavior spanning years, with numerous documented complaints we failed to address properly. Callum nodded approvingly. And Mr. Drake is suspended without pay for a substantial period, mandatory completion of extensive bias training programs, and permanent reassignment to non-passenger duties. His supervisory privileges have been revoked. The swift action reflected corporate panic. The airline's legal department had worked through the night, calculating exposure from potential class action lawsuits and federal investigations. The Drake Protocol has been approved by our board of directors, Sterling continued. Implementation begins immediately with a substantial budget allocation for the first year. Callum consulted his tablet. Explain the timeline specifics. Bias training rollout starts across all hubs. Tens of thousands of employees will complete certification within a defined period. The AI monitoring system goes live in due course, with beta testing beginning immediately at major hubs. Elena entered with implementation updates. The Civil Rights Ombudsman position has been posted. We are interviewing former Department of Justice attorneys and civil rights organization executives for the role. Quarterly diversity audits will be conducted by established civil rights organizations, Sterling added. Results published on our website and submitted to the Department of Transportation. The major scholarship fund had already generated positive media coverage, with applications opening for aviation programs at historically black colleges and universities. Celine's role in documenting the incident earned her recognition beyond viral fame. Major networks offered her correspondent positions covering civil rights issues. Her livestream had become a case study in citizen journalism's power to enforce corporate accountability. Preston Hale's employer terminated his consulting contract, Callum noted, consulting his phone. His comments during the incident violated their diversity and inclusion policies. The passenger conduct database was already operational. Preston's profile included warnings about discriminatory behavior potentially affecting his ability to travel on multiple airlines. Officer Tristan received commendation from Airport Security Administration for her professionalism during the crisis. Her careful handling of an impossible situation became training material for security personnel nationwide. The ripple effects extend beyond this airline, Callum observed. Other major carriers have all announced enhanced bias training programs. The industry is taking notice. Federal authorities issued new guidance requiring airlines to report discrimination incidents promptly. Congressional hearings were scheduled to examine systemic bias in commercial aviation. Our investor confidence has stabilized, Sterling reported carefully. Major funds confirmed continued support following your announcement of increased investment rather than divestiture. Drake Investment Group had surprised the market by increasing their position, demonstrating faith in the company's reform efforts. The additional investment sent stock prices soaring, recovering all losses from the initial incident. Real change requires ongoing accountability, Callum emphasized. Our quarterly compliance reviews will monitor progress on every metric. The transformation wasn't just cosmetic. The airline restructured their entire customer service philosophy around dignity and respect. Employee evaluations now included bias assessment scores. Promotion requirements included demonstrated cultural competency. In due course, we'll evaluate the program's effectiveness, Callum announced. Success means continued partnership. Failure means immediate divestiture and public documentation of shortcomings. The threat remained real. Drake Investment Group's influence extended throughout the investment community. Their approval or condemnation could make or break corporate reputations. Reed, the coach flight attendant who'd witnessed Vivian's discrimination, was promoted to diversity training coordinator. His insider perspective on discriminatory practices made him invaluable for identifying problem areas. This incident demonstrates that economic leverage creates faster change than legal action. Callum reflected, corporate boardrooms respond to financial pressure more quickly than courtrooms. The Drake Protocol became industry standard within a relatively short period. Other investment firms adopted similar ESG enforcement strategies, using economic power to drive social progress across industries. This airline will become the industry leader in inclusive customer service, Sterling pledged. The failure becomes the foundation for excellence. Callum closed his briefcase, satisfied with the comprehensive response. Ms. Langford, ensure that every employee understands tonight's lesson. Discrimination is expensive, but accountability is profitable. The quiet revolution had succeeded. Power wielded responsibly created lasting change that no amount of protesting could have achieved. Economic justice had proven more effective than legal justice. The airline learned that treating customers with dignity wasn't just morally right, it was financially essential. Sometime after the flight, the airline reported the highest customer satisfaction scores in company history. The Drake Protocol had transformed not just policies but corporate culture itself. Callum stood before an aviation diversity summit, addressing industry leaders from around the world. His quiet victory had inspired a movement that extended far beyond airlines. Dignity isn't negotiable, he told the audience. When we demanded accountability, we created lasting change that protects every traveler who follows. The numbers told the story. Discrimination complaints across participating airlines dropped substantially industry-wide. Minority business travel increased significantly on carriers implementing bias training programs. The economic impact of inclusion had become undeniable. Celine's documentary premiered at a major film festival, winning the Audience Award for Best Documentary Feature. Her citizen journalism had evolved into a platform for exposing systemic inequality across industries. One phone recording changed everything, Celine reflected in interviews. It proves that ordinary people can hold extraordinary power accountable when they document truth. The Equality Foundation, established with Callum's leadership, had awarded millions in aviation scholarships to underrepresented students. Dozens of recipients were now enrolled in pilot training programs at historically black colleges. Corporate America took notice. The Drake model spread to hospitality, retail, and healthcare sectors. Investment firms adopted ESG enforcement strategies using economic leverage to drive social progress across industries. Vivian's termination became a cautionary tale in business schools nationwide. Her discriminatory actions cost the airline substantial immediate reforms, plus incalculable reputation damage that took years to repair. Economic consequences speak louder than moral arguments, Callum observed during a business school lecture. When discrimination becomes expensive, corporations change quickly. Federal authorities adopted the Drake Protocol as recommended guidelines for all commercial airlines. Bias training, monitoring systems, and accountability measures became industry requirements rather than voluntary initiatives. These real-life stories demonstrate that quiet power can overcome systemic injustice more effectively than confrontation. Callum's strategic response created lasting transformation that continues inspiring change today. Stories like this remind us that progress happens when preparation meets opportunity. Accounts of dignity defended through economic leverage prove that justice takes many forms. Preston eventually issued a public apology, participating in diversity training seminars where he shared his experience as a cautionary tale. His willingness to acknowledge complicity and discrimination became part of his rehabilitation. Officer Tristan was promoted to Airport Security Training Director, developing protocols that balance authority with respect for passenger dignity. The ripple effects continue. Every time a passenger receives respectful treatment, regardless of race, the legacy of that flight lives on. Every airline employee who chooses inclusion over bias honors the courage of those who demanded change. Real stories have real power, Callum concluded his summit address. When we document discrimination and demand accountability, we create the change we want to see. If you've experienced discrimination while traveling, share your story. Your voice matters. Your experience creates change. These accounts of quiet power overcoming bias need to be heard. Subscribe for more stories of dignity defended and justice served. Together we document truth and demand the respect we deserve.